The challenge of writing about an historical event is to make the audience feel what people felt before the event had reached the conclusion that we all know about. During the American Revolution, no one knew how it would come out, although there were long periods in which the only outcome that seemed possible was for the revolution to fail. Hamilton will take us into those moments too, with its scenes from the front a little later on. But in this song, the whole project still seems like a wild, unnecessary dream. The kind of thing that young, idealistic people talk about in bars, getting louder and louder, building on each other's commitment, working themselves up into a daring and dangerous act, which is what the revolution was in New York City in 1776. My Shot is their anthem, filtered through one character. Hamilton knows this could get him killed, but he's willing, and he knows he's ready despite having none of the prerequisites that a class-conscious society demands. And he's giddy with the determination to make his life count for something. I love the multiple meanings of take a shot. With Lafayette's verse, it means fire a gun. With Milligan's, it means make an effort. And with Lauren's, it means have a drink. All three are intertwined throughout the song, maybe even more in the staging, which offers the option of people downing a drink when the word is said. And of course, the defiant refrain foreshadows Hamilton's decision in the final duel to do exactly that, throw away his shot. Or would firing straight at Burr be throwing away his shot? We'll hear more on that when we get to each of the three duels, Lauren's and Charlie Lee's, Philip Hamilton and George Eckert's, and Alexander Hamilton's and Burr's. In any case, it is literally Hamilton's theme, his musical motif, along with the sung signature of his name. Rat-a-tat-tatted each time Burr repeats, how does a bastard, orphan, etc. With all its variants, the core of his personality, the summation of his drive, and the root of his phenomenal success. Miranda could have blamed Hamilton's most foolish decisions on it as well, but he doesn't. Hamilton's determination to get the most out of life was self-destructive as well as creative. But Miranda argues against this conclusion by omitting the oft-repeated not throwing away my shot from the moment that Hamilton plunges into his disastrous affair and say no to this, or the moment that he disastrously reveals it, hurricane. Not that his declaration here is entirely positive. It's a mix of ego. Don't be shocked when your history book mentions me. Eventually you'll see my ascendancy. And purer motives. Meanwhile, while Britain keeps sitting on us endlessly, I will lay down my life if it sets us free. But what strikes me most is the way that his bravado is shot through with intelligence and forethought. He's thinking past tomorrow. And if we win our independence, is that a guarantee of freedom for our descendants? Or will the blood we shed begin an endless cycle of vengeance and death with no defendants? I know the action in the street is exciting, but Jesus, between all the bleeding and fighting, I've been reading and writing we need to handle our financial situation. Are we a nation of states? What is the state of our nation? The lyrics and the drive of the music argue that it's a combination of passion and careful thought that makes the revolution a success. Made it more than a brawl, than a bunch of hotheads started and unexpectedly won. The great man theory of history is all over the play, but despite the limitations of that worldview, it's true that Hamilton and a few other disciplined leaders were essential in getting us through the war and establishing a lasting government. For my money, it is Lafayette who is most responsible for making the revolution a success. But that, as they say, is a different sermon. And at least Miranda has broadened great man to include a tailor's apprentice, who would survive his work as a spy and then go to a quiet post-war life as a tailor, proudly telling his war stories to the people gathered in his shop. The part of the song where I choke up with unexpected patriotism is when Lauren leads the people in singing, "Rise up. Rise up. When you're living on your knees, you gotta rise up. Tell your brother he's gotta rise up. Tell your sister she's gotta rise up. Just try to join the ensemble without feeling a rush of emotion as you sing. When are the colonies gonna rise up? When are the colonies gonna rise up? When are the colonies gonna rise up? When are these colonies gonna rise up? Rise up." Has there ever been a time in our history when those words were not appropriate? They are certainly true now. My shot has the revolutionaries planning to roll like Moses, claiming our promised land so they can build God's country. This gives them symbolic moral power, believing that God has blessed their endeavor. The Boston Tea Party happened in December 1773, around the time that Hamilton enrolled in university. In fact, his first political essay defended the event. The Sons of Liberty met on the Commons near Queen's College on July 6, 1774. There, Hamilton burst into a fiery speech. Historically, Hamilton joined the Revolution about that time. With the British preparing an assault on New York, he formed an artillery company with some fellow students, including Hercules Mulligan, one of the greatest names. And they seized cannon and rifles from a British armory. The oldest unit in the U.S. Army today is Hamilton's unit, the 1st Battalion, 5th Field Artillery. Legend has it that Hamilton fired a cannon at the British and sliced through a portrait of King George II in the chapel. On stage, the tavern patrons sing and dance, and the scene opens to the New York streets with even more eager listeners, emphasizing how the word is spreading even wider. Lawrence tells everyone they must rise up. A ring of light fills the stage, and a turntable in the floor spins like travels around the entire city in a world revolving into something new. Together they sing "Rise Up," another ongoing motif. The new revolutionaries, minus Burr, who's more hesitant, march forward in the middle of it all. Hamilton's song ends powerfully, with arm thrust into the air like the song's logo, like the show's logo. I've always loved Latin proverbs. Often they are written in short, fancy words. They have deep meanings that may lead to many interpretations, depending on how one perceives it. My favorites among many are "Per aspera astra," through hardship to the stars, and "Ad minora," towards better things, which I often utter these days. There's one quote that I could never seem to get out of my head. It's been on the inside of my office door for decades. It's an exceptional quote with deeper meaning ready to unfold. "Fortutus fortuna advent," which means fortune favors the bold. One of its earliest uses is when Terence, a Roman playwright, used it in his comedy play called Phormio. Later on, the quote was made famous as the motto of a notable U.S. Navy ships and of Trumbull College of Yale University. My high school wrestling coach liked to say, "Luck is when preparation meets opportunity." And although I intensely dislike that coach, I've tried to live by that motto. Like Hamilton, Abigail of this morning's scripture reading certainly favored boldness. Many of us cringe when we hear the story of Abigail. She was trapped for a while in a marriage to a hard-drinking, surly, uncaring man whose name even meant fool. She appears accustomed to covering for his excesses and meanness and all the ways that he embarrassed himself and her and the others around him. We might rush to call this a codependent marriage. Abigail's personality seems to fit. It's hard to imagine that she could have stayed in her marriage without some serious blows to her self-esteem. She seems obsequious. Obsequious, of course, means overly devoted to one's partner or spouse. Anne, my devoted wife, has always maintained that this is not possible, that I cannot be overly devoted to her. Abigail fell down on her face in the story more than once, claiming the blame for her husband's selfish actions. She called David my Lord 13 times in 8 verses, not to mention answering his marriage proposal by calling herself a slave willing to wash his servants' feet. Fortunately, there is much, much more to Abigail. Like so many other women in undermining marriages, she chose to use her pain for her strength. Her humility and irreconciling nature, which in some circumstances can be unhealthy self-effacement, became a transforming power that saved people from destruction. Abigail took her shot. She stepped forward and acted boldly. If it were not the case that blood was about to be spilt, this tale would have a comic feel to it. David shouting, "Every man strap on his sword," and charging off and leaving 200 behind to protect the baggage. Abigail arriving on the back of a donkey with 5 dead sheep, 200 bread loaves, and a serious raisin cachet. And then my lording David to humiliating excess. Her cruel and drunk husband turning stone-like, and then Abigail marrying a king whose idea of wooing was to send her servants after her. I mean, how romantic. Clearly, the person with the most sense and chutzpah in this story is Abigail. Nabal is selfish and stupid. David is rash, deciding to punish Nabal's stinginess with a major bloodletting. Abigail is obviously trusted for her integrity and ingenuity, because the young man in the group sent by David came to her to ask what he should do. We wonder how David would have gotten by without all the astute women in his life. While the young men were sword-strapping, which sounds provocative, Abigail used the only power she had, the gifts of generosity and peace. She refused to be caught between her husband's stupidity and David's anger. Single-handedly, she prepared a feast, slipped out without her husband finding out, and pleaded with David to spare her household. As author Eden Dean has said, she may be the earliest female pacifist on record. Her integrity puts David to shame. He reconsidered and puts away his sword. But she had to face one more confrontation with her husband. She did not back off, and she was rewarded with her freedom from his cruelty and control. Abigail was a wise woman. She knew that David would one day be king. She saved him from an unwise massacre and a bad conscience. And David recognized her wisdom and blessed her for her good sense. When once again the men rattled their sword 3 chapters later, when the Amalekites made a raid and captured her with other women, we can believe that she clung to her dignity and strength. She rose up and was a calming influence on the other women until their rescue, and was an advocate for them before her enemies. You can read about it in 1 Samuel 30. So, Hamilton and Abigail, 2 who knew that fortune favors boldness, that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. that God empowers us not with a spirit of timidity or fearfulness, but with boldness and initiative. May it be so with all of us. All I know is every time my shot reaches its end, every time I say out loud to the empty car or whoever's around, man, that is such a great song. Amen.
I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. I'ma get a scholarship to King's College. I probably shouldn't brag, but dag, I'm amazed and astonished. The problem is I got a lot of brains but no polish. I gotta holler just to be heard. With every word I drop knowledge. I'm a diamond in the rough, a shining piece of coal, trying to reach my goal. My power of speech unimpeachable. Only 19, but my mind is older. These New York City streets get colder. I shoulder every burden, every disadvantage I've learned to manage. I don't have a gun to brandish. I walk these streets famished. The plan is to fan this spark into a flame. But damn, it's getting dark, so let me spell out the name. I am the A-L-E-X-A-N-D-E-R. We are meant to be a colony that runs independently. Meanwhile, Britain keeps shitting on us endlessly. Essentially, they tax us relentlessly. Then King George turns around, runs a spending spree. He ain't never gonna set his descendants free. So there will be a revolution in this century. Enter me.
He says in parentheses.
Don't be shocked when your history book mentions me. I will lay down my life if it sets us free. Eventually, you'll see my ascendancy. And I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. It's time to take a shot.
I dream of life without a monarchy. The unrest in France will lead to anarchy. Anarchy, how you say? I use anarchy. When I fight, I make the other side panicky with my shot.
Yo, I'm a tailor's apprentice, and I got y'all knuckleheads and local parentis. I'm joining a rebellion, cause I know it's my chance to socially advance. Instead of sewing some pants, I'm gon' take a shot.
And but we'll never be truly free until those in bondage have the same rights as you and me. You and I do or die. Wait till I sally in on a stallion with the first black battalion. Have another shot.
Geniuses, lower your voices. You keep out of trouble and you double your choices. I'm with you, but the situation is fraught. You've got to be carefully taught. If you talk, you're gonna get shot.
Bird, check what we got. Mr. Lafayette, hard rock like Lancelot. I think your pants look hot. Lawrence, I like you a lot. Let's hatch a plot blacker than the kettle calling the pot. What are the odds of God will put us all in one spot? Pop in a squad and conventional wisdom, like it or not. A bunch of revolutionary manumission abolitionists. Give me a position, show me where the ammunition is. Oh, am I talking too loud? Sometimes I get overexcited, shoot off at the mouth. I never had a group of friends before. I promise that I'll make y'all proud.
Let's get this guy in front of a crowd.
I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot.
Everybody sing.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey.
Whoa.
That he's gotta rise up. Tell your sister that she's gotta rise up.
When are these colonies gonna rise up? 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 Rise up!
I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory. When's it gonna get me? In my sleep, 7 feet ahead of me. If I see it coming, do I run or do I let it be? Is it like a beat without a melody? See, I never thought I'd live past 20. Where I come from, some get half as many. Ask anybody why we living fast and we laugh, reach for a flask. We have to make this moment last. That's plenty, scratch that. This is not a moment, it's the movement. Where all the hungriest brothers with something to prove went. Foes oppose us, we take an honest stand. We roll like Moses, claiming our promised land. And if we win our independence, is that a guarantee of freedom for our descendants. Or will the blood we shed begin an endless cycle of vengeance and death with no defendants? I know the action in the street is exciting, but Jesus, between all the bleeding and fighting I've been reading and writing, we need to handle our financial situation. Are we a nation of states? What's the state of our nation? I'm past patiently waiting, I'm passionately smashing every expectation, every action's an act of creation. I'm laughing in the face of casualties of sorrow. For the first time I'm thinking past tomorrow.
And I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. We gonna rise up, time to take a shot. We gonna rise up, time to take a shot. We gonna rise up, rise up.
It's time to take a shot.
Rise up, rise
It's
up.
time to take a shot.
Rise up,
It's time to take a shot.
rise up.
Take a shot, shot, shot.
Hey yo, it's time to take a shot, time to take a shot. And I am not throwing away my shot.
Depart now in the company of Christ the Creator, and as you go, remember, by the goodness of God you were born into this world. By the grace of God you have been kept all day long, even unto this hour. And by the love of God, fully revealed in the face of Jesus, you are being redeemed. Amen.